Raised on D&D podcast helps enrich your family's gaming experience by bringing you interviews with parents, educators, game designers, and influencers. Join us as we delve into the many ways that tabletop role-playing games inspire creativity, develop communication skills, and create lasting bonds among players. Your host has been an avid gamer since childhood, and now his kids are being raised on D&D. Here's your host, Nick Cardarelli.
Welcome back, gamers. I'm your host, Nick Cardarelli, and this is Raised on D&D. My next guests are from Texas. You know them from their YouTube and Instagram, where they show videos of playing Dungeons and Dragons with their kids and pictures of their games, crafts, and books. They're currently focusing their YouTube channel to feature new games, book reviews, and crafting. Please welcome the parents of DnDnFamily, Amanda and Benjamin. Hey guys, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Cam.
Thanks for having us.
We're super excited. You know, I love your YouTube channel and the Instagram. It's so inspiring. All the crafts, the miniature painting, the book reviews. It's fantastic. Before we jump into all the things you guys are doing at DnDnFamily, I wanted to have you take us back to your very first experience with tabletop role-playing games and where your love for Dungeons and Dragons began. Who wants to start us off?
Benjamin had a little bit of experience with Dungeons and Dragons before I did. His dad played back in the day. And so he had some knowledge, but hadn't played too much. And then he discovered Critical Role and showed Critical Role to me, which I very, very quickly fell in love with. And possibly surpassed his obsession with it. I'm a little bit of a critter.
She's listened to both campaigns like 4 times. So
doing dishes, whatever, I throw it on. I'm there. But we, had just had a new baby, and we're kind of missing getting to hang out with some friends of our own. And a lot of our friends were kind of in different places with their life as far as like work and family and marriage and all that. And so we decided to get a bunch of friends together and have them come over to our house. We can potluck dinner. Kids can have their epic movie night upstairs. The parents play downstairs. There's food galore. We all chip in, and it became let's get everybody to have a nice night without having to stress about babysitters or, any of that. And it's become a regular thing for us. It really made a nice little family group for us. It's pretty solid.
That's phenomenal. And whenever you make D&D night a party with food and friends, always brings it to another level. So Ben, I want to comment about this. So you are a generational gamer, as it were. Your dad played D&D back in the day. So describe to us what that was like growing up in that gamer household. Were you included at it, or did dad and his friends go into the basement and just came back out 4 or 8 hours later?
So I have never gotten to see my dad in action. Unfortunately, he was really, really big in college. I grew up with him telling me stories of all the different stuff that he did in college. But he was they were super serious about it. They would start Friday when school ended, and then they would end Monday when school started. So they said that they'd wake each other up if there was something really important happening with their character or something. But it became super all encompassing in his life. And then he just kind of stopped after a while. And but there's always been this nerd connection between me and him. He introduced me to all things like Lord of the Rings, Elric of Melibone, all these different books and fantasy series. And when I discovered Dungeons and Dragons later, I did a little bit in high school, but it was more like we all talked about playing Dungeons and Dragons a lot more than we actually played. And then when we started doing it for our friends group, thank you. For our friends group, I started getting more into it. I started talking to him about it again. And every once in a while, I just see a little spark in his eyes, be like, oh, That's cool because there's a lot of new things. It's a very different game from it was when he was doing it in the late 70s, early 80s. There's a lot more like terrain and just like tools. Like he thinks D&D Beyond is like a really, really cool little tool that he would have loved to have when he was playing. So one day I'm going to pull him into a game and we're actually going to play together. It's going to be great.
That's phenomenal. That's really incredible. And I remember growing up, I've been a gamer for over 30 years now. And I remember those days of marathon games that lasted from Friday night to Monday morning. And do I miss them? No, I don't miss them. I would never do that again. But
it takes a good stamina check.
It really does. I had a lot of Mountain Dew, folks. But what an incredible connection you can have with your dad. And now you guys have that connection together. And so, Amanda, you mentioned that Critical Role really played an instrumental part in you discovering this amazing hobby. Now, had you not had any experience with tabletop role-playing games up to that point?
I had not had a single moment of experience. So for me, I'm ADHD to the max. I am super visual. So seeing everyone not only voice their characters phenomenally, because I mean, come on, the cast is amazing, but seeing everybody get into their characters, it was kind of like just watching some friends hang out. And I was like, this is phenomenal. I would love to do that and just to have a good time and make up silly stories. And so it was just something I kind of fell head over heels for right off of the bat. And then getting to see all of our friends enjoying that experience. I had it vicariously through watching Critical Role, but then getting to see it happen at the table where, someone just kind of gets into the moment and slips into their character real hard and everyone around the table cheers. And it's been magic from the get-go and I love it.
Well, tell me a little bit about your friends group. So are these all hardcore gamers, or when you guys said, hey, come over for a potluck and you went, hey, surprise, guess what we're doing?
Kind of the second one, honestly. When I started this, I worked on Fear the Walking Dead as a prop maker.
Wow.
And my free time is spent not free. It's just, so when I was organizing this, I had to find other people who had a similar work schedule as me. So there was a couple people from actually Fear. And then I had some friends that I grew up with that I've known since I was 11 years old that have also joined the group. But none of us, not a single one of us had ever played Dungeons and Dragons before. Wow. And I mean, like I said, I had experience with it in high school, but that experience was more the dream of it than the actual, playing of it. But I was like, I want to do this. I got all the books that I could, and I just started like diving into it and learning how to DM. And I learned a lot those first couple sessions for sure. And eventually our game is now to the point where we talk about it all the time. We have a chat group that just goes constantly, but no one had ever played, which took a little bit of the pressure off of me at first, because I was like, hey, these guys have no idea if I'm good or not. That's going to be fine. Yeah. But then it's become so good. It's become wonderful.
It's been really interesting. We have two friends tables now, as well as running games with the kids. But our table one, our OG group, we started that game with the premise of, we would like some friends, please. We would like to hang out. We love our babies, but we need other parent friends who can understand, like, okay, we got to pause the game because somebody's crying or someone needs a juice or we got to change a diaper. And we needed flexible folks. So we brought friends in with the hope of us all learning the game together. And that game's been running for, 3 years?
Like 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Now.
Wow.
And it's an awesome campaign. We have...
You guys are just, you're level 10 now. So they've gone from 1st to 10th level so far.
Yes.
Wow.
So we've got friends who, some of them started out with no kids. Everybody is officially a parent now. And we had a friend just get married a couple of months ago. And so
when we started, we called it a parents group. There was 2 people in there who weren't actually parents, and now everybody is. It's so great.
Yeah, fantastic. And then our second table, we got together because we wanted to play more frequently because everyone's parents and our schedules are pretty cohesive, but it's hard to schedule sometimes. We wanted to throw another game into our mix. So we decided to see about looking on a Facebook group and polling for some local people who were really in love with the game, who wanted to give it a chance playing at our house. So
right, we wanted kind of the opposite experience of our first game, which was a bunch of people who bonded over the game, but knew each other beforehand. And we wanted to meet a whole new group of people who we'd never met before, but all shared the love for the game and then bonded that way. And the 2 groups dynamics are very different. Group 1 is very much kind of like a football hangout game where everybody's just chatting and having a great time. Group 2 is like, as soon as we get there, we're starting the game and we're going. And it's so great. And it's really fun to like pick up on those different dynamics between the game, but
it's a lot of fun.
That's an incredible story, and I love it because it shows that friends can come together over the game table and the game can amplify that friendship, and strangers who love the game can come together and grow in friendship. And I think it's wonderful that you guys put yourselves out there and tried both of those experiences. That's wonderful. It helps you grow as a dungeon master. It helps you grow as a player. And it definitely helps you grow as a person. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. And the real like special thing is both of those groups of friends have so much become like more of our friends. They're like our best friends now, more so than any other people outside of Dungeons and Dragons, even though I've been friends with longer or so.
Yeah, that's something that we've definitely noticed with the community, not only in our own games, but like, especially our Instagram community. Oh my goodness. It's just so positive. It's been so sweet and kind. Everybody is lovely. And we've been able to meet such a cross section of people.
And when you guys go slay monsters together, it's hard not to bond. It just is. Even if the first group we try really tries hard not to bond in character, they still do.
One of our characters has a no bonding policy.
She's not very good at that policy, though. She bonds all the time.
And that bonding around the gaming table, like you mentioned, Benjamin, that's so powerful. Having gamed for 3 decades, I have people that I played a single session with at a convention, and we don't talk for a decade or more. And when we bump into each other, we're right back there. You remember that time with the troll, and it's instant friendship all over again. So it's an incredible bond. Now, you guys have shared this love of Dungeons and Dragons with your children. How many children do you guys have?
We have 3 beautiful girls, 12, 6, and 3 years old.
And when did you, at what age were they when you said, you know what, let's sit down and start rolling dice with them?
So I started with my Isabel, who at the time was 3 years old.
That's our middle kiddo.
And because there's so many things that I find can be really advantageous to children, and it can be such a good learning tool. Like just the imaginative play and just like being in a world where you're focusing on a story and with kids, it gets all crazy and goes all kinds of different places because there wasn't a lot of a rule structure to Izzy and I's earliest games. It was more just like number recognition and loss acceptance was like a big one for that. I thought was a good learning tool because, the dice is a good like proximity for like if you fail or succeed. And so we had to be like, oh, no, you couldn't do that this time, but let's try again later. We just all this kinds of different stuff that rolls up into this magical little, 20-minute play session with the kiddo that she took off was she talks about Dungeons and Dragons more than we do maybe now.
She's actually starting to DM her own little impromptu games.
She constantly asks us if we can play, and she can DM.
Well, the great thing about when Ben started, we had just had a baby. And so she became our official middle kiddo. And as a middle kid, I understand the struggle of feeling like, oh, big sister's so big and has so much freedom. And here's this new baby who's getting all my snuggles and attention. Where do I fit in? So Ben decided to sit down with her because she had seen us playing at the table with our friends and had expressed interest in the game. He decided to take a moment to do something just with her. And so that's why if you'll go to, when you go to our YouTube channel, the videos that we have there are her very first games. And it was just to have a special little nugget of time where it's just dad and daughter and, making a story. And it kind of went awry sometimes. That lost acceptance is, like Ben talked about, that's a hard one for a 3-year-old to go, but I didn't roll the high number.
Yeah.
You bumped me on the head, even though I had magical protection. Nope, sorry. It was very interesting to see her. Not only she recognized that she was getting special time, that she was getting to be brought into the fold a little sooner than her sisters. But to see her start to pick up the game intuitively and not realizing that she's learning to navigate that world and how to make the dice rolls advantageous, or if not advantageous, at least very hilarious.
Yeah.
It was really sweet to see.
That is wonderful. And Benjamin, you mentioned that playing with young players is very different from playing with adults. Can you share with us a moment that kind of surprised you? Like you presented a scenario and you thought she'd do one thing. She ended up doing something that really took you by surprise.
Oh, yeah. So when we were playing in one of those early games, I had a froghemoth come out in the swamp and attack her at one point, and she called upon a stink beetle to distract it and make it smell bad. And it was just such a funny little moment that was not, just I'm going to hit you or something. It was just something that came from her head, just completely out of nowhere, that I want a magical stink beetle to come distract this monster for me. And it was hysterical and perfect for the moment. Because that's one of the things we want to do is we try to find situations where we can use non-combat with the kids to like solve these little social interactions that can then happen. And that's just further training for, regular life. And it's such a great tool for that.
It is. You're absolutely right. And I love how they think outside the box. They're not on rails. Older gamers like me would read the monster manual. So we'd be fighting for 4 levels with the same sword. And then we face a mummy and we know only silver can hurt it. And suddenly, for no reason, we put our big sword away and pull out a little silver dagger and say, I'm going to fight the mummy with this. And the dungeon master would say, I know what you're doing and it's wrong. Right. and so, but children don't have those rails. They can think outside the box. They can say, what I need to distract a giant frog is a bug that will help me. I mean, that is wonderful. So you guys now, did you eventually incorporate all the girls into gaming at the table together? Tell us about that.
Yes. So after Izzy had started running some games with Benjamin, Emma, our oldest, expressed some interest as well. And so we ended up getting a little friends group together for her. This was right before the pandemic. So they didn't get too far in their campaign, but we had several sessions with some of her friends where they helped out a local town and earned themselves a keep along the way. And so
Amanda DM'd that one.
Yeah. That was I DM'd for her buddies. And then eventually when COVID hit, we weren't having as many people in and out of the house. Our grown-up games had gone virtual. And the youngest one was, getting a little bit older to where she could at least sit at the table with us and, dice gobbling it up in the corner while we actually play the game. And so now we'll sit down and we'll run, a little random encounter. My favorite thing to do is to reskin one of their favorite shows or movies with the plot. And that way it's familiar enough for them that they kind of understand the mechanics of how they're going to solve the problem or how they'll approach it, but it's not always obvious as to why they figured it out. So it's kind of a little confidence boost in their corner. But yeah, we'll all just sit down and someone will go, okay, I'm going to DM real quick. We'll sit down at the table and bust out some dice, and everybody's got a mini they're working on because we're usually painting and crafting and whatnot. So we'll put them on the table and just go for it.
That's the other thing is it's not just the playing of the game, but it's all the stuff that encompasses like the crafting and the mini painting. And so we're constantly doing those stuff with the kids as well. So Isabel and Gizmo, Gizmo's a nickname. Gizmo, we have a little table that they can just go to and paint minis at anytime they want to. So
you guys touched on a lot of great things. And Amanda, that is such a wonderful tip for parents who are dungeon mastering for their children, is to take that plot device from a movie or TV show. I know with mine, they really liked crossovers. So they'd really like to have their favorite show characters make cameos in games and things like that. And I do my best with voices and try and like do imitations of their favorite heroes and just have them kind of pass through the adventure or give them the plot and things like that. But the idea that you take a show or a movie that they had already watched and were familiar with, and they go, oh, this is just like that one show. And like you said, it gave them a confidence boost. They kind of knew where it was going. So there wasn't so much anxiety, right? So that is incredible. And Benjamin, absolutely. One of the things I love about Dungeons and Dragons, especially with children, is that there is no end to where it can lead, from arts and crafts with painting, miniature painting, and with terrain building, to just researching history. How heavy is a suit of armor? How does a catapult actually work? Those kind of things. And then even more so when we get into science fiction role-playing games, they want to know about how far a light year is away, and they want to know how nanobots work and things like that. It's a constant fuel for not only imagination but curiosity and knowledge. And you can't, if you could bottle it, you'd be millionaires. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. It's just a constant inspiration and funnel for all that creativity and curiosity, like you were saying.
And I want to pedal back here for just a second, because you mentioned, Amanda, that you started dungeon mastering for the girls and their friends. So was that your first time getting behind the DM screen?
Yes, it was, which even though I was just running a game for some little preteen kids, I still had the DM nerves. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel so unprepared. Yes, that was definitely my first time behind the screen, and I absolutely love it. I have not DM'd for our grown-up friends yet, but I have a one-shot in the works. So,
and you were putting together a Strahd game.
Yes, I was putting together a Strahd game. Unfortunately, the group kind of fizzled before we got to run it, but I have plans.
But the cool thing about that game that she was doing is she was for a deaf group. She's a sign language interpreter, so she was trying to assemble a game that ended up falling through the cracks with scheduling and everything. But
that was the real hindrance. There was, we just ended up not being able to get it together. We actually had several time zones involved with that one, but it was really interesting to consider the game from another viewpoint of how do we make this accessible to everyone at the table. And what modality, what are we going to be using to make sure that everyone at the table is out on the same page at all times and getting everything they need as a player.
I'm just blown away, because as a dungeon master, I cannot imagine the talent required to pull off a game using ASL, and the fact that you were making it more accessible to people to be able to experience the Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop role-playing game experience, that is amazing. It was an amazing undertaking, and I hope that it gets back on track and the scheduling works out so that you can do that. I'd love to hear about how that goes. My youngest son is currently taking ASL and in school as his language, and
Awesome.
and that's very exciting. Guys, you got some incredible things going on. So real quickly, we know a lot of your fans are listening, but for folks who are new to D&D and Family, can you tell us real briefly how it all got started? Like when you decided, hey, let's start putting this out there on YouTube and Instagram.
Sure. Yeah. So it really started with those early games with Izzy, where I just kind of wanted to show that the gaming in a capacity with the really small children is possible. And I didn't really have a how-to do it, but I wanted to just give an example of just like what imaginative play on a tabletop gaming experience looks like with such a young kid. And it kind of grew from there to where we just the hobby itself became so encompassing for us that it became really fun for us to like put other stuff out there. We started getting a little bit of following, and
I think one of the first things that we did was we recorded the videos. Well, Benjamin recorded the videos and posted it on YouTube, but then he also posted about it on Reddit. And there were a lot of people going, oh man, I loved this game as a kid. I wish my dad had played with me. Or, oh, I've got a kid on the way. I cannot wait to get them their first dice. And we saw so many people saying, oh, I wish I knew how to do this, or I give us more examples. We want to see what happens if, how do you approach this situation with your kid? And so from there, then we decided to pop up the Instagram, which has recently been our main mode of putting out content. And the way we kind of approach that is mostly like, fly on the wall photos, or the kind of photos you would send to grandma. Look, the grandkids are, painting a little miniature. We'll take a snapshot and send it to her. That's the kind of stuff that we just want people to see, real life examples of kids crafting or gaming and whatnot, just so that they can see that it's possible for them to do it too.
And I'm sure this, being a similar path, that there's a hunger for that. People really respond to being like, oh, this is something I can go down to my kids' level and really play with them
in a way that's enjoyable for me too.
You're right, exactly. And so there's a lot of response to that, and also touching on the fly on the wall perspective. Is that something we try very hard to make sure that our Instagram isn't like we're making our kids dance or anything. We want to make sure that for them, it's just playing the game. And so it's not something that we're like, it's not a job for them. They're not required to do it ever. It's always if they want to. That's why there's actually been some gaps in our content at times with the kids. In particular, is because sometimes they don't want to play.
They're not interested in that right now. Their mood may swing this way or that way. And so we just kind of go with the flow. We take a lot of home videos. We take a lot of pictures. And if there's a little gem out there that we can share with other people to spark excitement in a hobby that's brought us so much joy, we're ready to put that out. So
that is fantastic. And you're absolutely right. I've heard from so many parents over the years about how they were waiting till their child was D&D age to introduce them to tabletop role-playing games. Or for some of my friends who gamed in college in dark basements with beer and flaming hot Cheetos, their idea of Dungeons and Dragons was Conan the Barbarian and Deathstalker, 1970s and 80s sword and sorcery films. They're like, how do you incorporate that with children? So the fact that you guys are sharing that content and showing, look, this can be done and this is how it's done. And Reddit's a wonderful supportive community. And the fact that they gave you basically basically homework. Hey, try this scenario. How does that turn out with your kids? And so that's really, really great. My three are little stair steps. So they're about 17 months apart. And so I've shared before that basically I got stuck on an afternoon without mom and all three kiddos. And they were like 5, 4, and 3 at the time. And I'm like, okay, I've watched all the Wiggles I can stand for one morning. What can I do that will buy me time? Because everything we've done is like 10 minutes and it's over, right? So it was like, okay, what can I do where they're all corralled and they're all focused on the same thing? And I finally was like, I know, maps, minis, big monster mini, the screen, some character sheets. This guy over here can't read yet, but that doesn't matter. And I got to get him the big chunky dice so he doesn't choke, those kind of things, but we made it work. And it was like 30, 45 minutes of absolute focus and all these things. And they would pick up the monster mini and want to examine it and things like that. And I was like, wow, this worked. We made it. We made it through the afternoon. And it all just kind of kicked off from there. And we just celebrated 11 years of playing D&D at the table together as a family. So, and it's changed a lot and we've had a lot of experiences, but you're absolutely right. As parents want to share their hobbies, whatever their hobbies are, they want to share them with their children. And I think it's really critical, your advice there about not forcing it. We've experienced that ourselves, my wife and I, where somebody just didn't want to come to the table. And guess what? That game session didn't have 4 players and a dungeon master. It had 3 players and dungeon master. I've had my children ask for one-on-ones even as late as 8 and 10 years old, saying, hey, I have this character idea I made. I need your help statting it. And I'd like to sit down and run it through a scenario and just kind of see how it works and how it functions. And if it works, great. And I think it's wonderful that your daughter's already starting her dungeon master journey. My middle one started his dungeon master journey about 10, 11 years old, really started to want to do that. And we're homeschoolers ourselves. Once he started showing interest in dungeon mastering, I said, oh, no, we're going to multitask this all day. And I said, well, if you really want to be a dungeon master, you've got to write an adventure and we've got to type it up on the computer and you got to pick out art for it and we got to format it and this, that, and the other. And so he wrote his first adventure and ran it for the family. It was wonderful. So, but again, going back to what you said, Benjamin, about how the hobby brings about all these crafts and all these endeavors into knowledge. And we were able to incorporate that in the family as well. You guys have amazing content. In the last year or so, you've been doing giveaways of great books that help families and their gaming. What's next for D&D and Family? What can we expect coming up in the new year?
So this year, we are going to be really, really focusing on getting our YouTube channel back and alive, because that's really where it started for us and what we really want to do with our channel in general. Instagram has been such a lovely way to keep up and engage with the community and everything, but our heart really lies in making those videos. And so we are working on a few different projects. We're going to be making crafting videos soon. We're going to be doing book reviews together, and we're going to be playing more games with our kids. So that's really what to look forward to for us as the YouTube channel, to really be producing a lot more videos.
And that's terrific. And now is it youtube.com/DnDnFamily?
Yes, exactly. DnDnFamily. Yep.
Terrific. We have all that great content looking forward to. How to get started playing Dungeons and Dragons with their kids. What do you normally tell parents? What's the advice that you typically give them?
So like we talked on earlier, we touched on earlier, taking a story that your kids are already familiar with, maybe something that you enjoy as well. Maybe there's a, that weekend movie that you guys like to watch so often, and you can recraft that. One thing that as a DM I prefer is to feel more comfortable with the world that we're going to be playing in, much more than focusing on the linear story that's going to happen. Because as you know, DMing with kids, it's like herding cats. They're going to go in every direction. They're going to go on what's shiny, what's new. And so I have a vague idea of things that I would like to happen. And they can happen in whatever order the game deems is appropriate in the moment. We really go by the dice and we kind of play in that sandbox. And to not get too stressed if your kids are not into it at the moment, or the story's not going the way you thought. The real thing to keep in mind is your kids are just going to be thrilled to spend time with you. Even if things go wonky, they're going to remember, hey, my folks sat down with me and took time to just play, which, sometimes can be really hard. As a parent, we're working, we've got jobs, we've got kids, we've got the house to clean, we've got the pets to take care of. And to sit down and go, okay, let's pretend play can feel a little daunting or, less than exciting. But when you keep the time you're spending together at the forefront of your mind, it just makes for some really special memories. And like we touched on even earlier about having that shared memory and causing those moments of joy and remembrance, you feel like you really experienced those things. You get to have that with your parents and with your kids. And, oh, you remember when we fought the dragon? Yeah, I remember when we fought the dragon. Yeah. And then, the 3-year-old goes, yeah, and I tooted in the dragon's face. Ha ha ha, and that you have those little gems to hang on to.
I think
absolutely. Flexibility is something that I really try to kind of harp on when I'm talking to people about playing the game. It's like, don't be so rigid in the rules. Feel free to take the game in the direction that the kid wants to go, and just really run with it, and don't stress too much. Like Amanda said, the end goal is about the time spent with the kids at the table, and not necessarily about the game itself.
Absolutely. That bonding that we talked about earlier among friends and strangers, having that within the family, I know that over the years it has grown them together closer as siblings, and definitely all of us together closer as family. It's wonderful that you're sharing that content and inspiring families to do that at home together, so that they can see the benefit that both yours and my family have experienced around the game table. Amanda, Benjamin, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you for everything you're doing in the community, and we can't wait to see what's coming next from you.
Thanks
you
so much
for having us.
Yeah, it was great. It was a blast.